And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. I am Matt Volz, a junior at SUNY Fredonia, and I've got a full show this afternoon. Of course, some good, some bad. It's kind of a little bit of a tale of two shows as we're going to be talking about the two Buffalo teams. The Bills, of course, clinching the AFC East for the fifth straight year with their win over the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday night, improving to 10-2, which is the best record the Bills have had since, I believe, 1991, which one of the Super Bowl years in the early 90s. And the Bills, of course, are having an electrifying season and a season that a lot of people kind of thought they would not be as good as they've been the last few years. I know a lot of people really were picking the Dolphins to win the AFC East, or the Jets were a very popular pick as well. And the Bills have sort of proven all of that wrong. So we'll get to that more towards the end of the show. And then on the flip side of that, the Buffalo Sabres do what, well, pretty much only the Buffalo Sabres know how to do, which is disappoint their fans and put on yet another lackluster performance, especially at home. The Sabres last night against the Colorado Avalanche holding a 4-0 lead just a few minutes into the game, and somehow, some way, squandering that lead and losing 5-4 in regulation to lose their fourth straight game. Remember when the Sabres won all three of their games out west a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed like they were really, putting on something special? Yeah, apparently they've totally forgotten that, along with totally forgetting how to play hockey after a few minutes, as the Sabres had chased the starting goaltender of Colorado out of the net and then completely took their foot off the gas and just kind of generally stopped trying to play hockey. So we'll get to more of that later, but first, Fredonia Sports, as always, how we start the show. And it should be a good weekend, as it's been an abbreviated week, of course, with having Monday and Tuesday off for students not having classes because the weather was not very favorable or conducive to that. Weather's better in Fredonia now, but now it's just a matter of sort of digging out the rest of the campus. And I can tell you from having walked across the way a little bit a few times that some of the sidewalks on campus are still just an absolute sheet of ice. So anyone walking across campus, definitely be careful, walk slow. You don't want anybody dumping it. I'm surprised I didn't. I went to get lunch about an hour before the show started, and holy cow, the sidewalk outside of McEwen Hall is just pretty much a patch of ice. So, I was able to, with my nice handy winter boots on, I was able to truck through the ice and the snow and all that sort of stuff. And fortunately, I didn't have to brush off my car too much because I got back from the Sabres game kind of late last night, so I didn't have as much snow on my car as everybody else did. So this morning when my friend and I are getting ready to go to class, she had to pretty much dig her car out from the mound of snow, and I had a little bit to brush off the windshield, and that was pretty much it, which was kind of nice. But anyways, I was at the Sabres game last night. I forgot to mention that detail. I was there for the game, and it was fun for the first, I had a great time. I always have a great time when I go to the Sabres games, but, the first 7 minutes were great, and then the Sabres did what they do best and let their fans down. But anyways, on to Fredonia Sports, and speaking of hockey, this weekend should be a really fun one for the Blue Devils hockey team as they're back at home. This is actually the first time all season that they've played, that they will be playing on home ice in front of students. They've only had, or since the beginning of November. They had a couple of games the first weekend of November. They played Trine University. That was November 1st and 2nd. The next time they were home after that was last Tuesday, which was over break. They played Chatham and lost that game. So they're home for two SUNYAC games this weekend, and it is Alumni Weekend. The Blue Devils will take on Plattsburgh on Friday night at 7 p.m. and then Potsdam on Saturday at 7. And many members of the mid-90s Fredonia hockey teams are going to be here, going to be making the trip here from wherever they might be. Some of them are still in the Western New York area. Others are, some live out west. Some are up in the New England area. Some are down in Pennsylvania. Some are, down south. But that just sort of speaks to the community and the teams that I'm referencing in 1993-94 and 94-95. Fredonia's hockey team in back-to-back years went all the way to, in 93-94, the team made it all the way to the Final Four of all of Division III, and they lost in the Final Four that was the only game they lost all season. 29 wins, 1 loss, and 4 ties in the 1993-94 season. And then they ended up having a third-place game, and they won that game in a blowout. And then the following season, Fredonia made it all the way to the national championship game where they ultimately fell just a little bit short. Again, both those games were very, very close. And a lot of those players, they're still very closely in contact with head coach Jeff Meredith, who was the head coach of those teams and is still the head coach of the Fredonia Blue Devils hockey team. And a lot of them are still in very close contact. Anyone who frequently reads The Leader or listens to Big Blue Sports Podcast, you may know that last April I wrote a 2-part series about the team from back then, those teams in the mid-90s, how good they were, and about how they have all still stayed in contact, even though a lot of them are living in different places and they still find ways to come together. And a lot of them are going to be in town this weekend for the Friday and Saturday night games. So that should be certainly a lot of fun. I will be on the call on play-by-play. You can watch those games live on WNYF's YouTube channel. I will be doing play-by-play. Mitch Harusi will be on color. And it should be a couple of fun games. Now, I haven't done a Fredonia hockey game. It's been a while. The last game that I was able to go to was at the end of last season because I was away at a conference when they were home against Trine. And, of course, we were all home on break when they were home last week. It's been sort of an all-over-the-place season location-wise for them. They haven't been home very much, but they're home a lot more in the spring semester. And throughout the rest of December, they're home. I think one more weekend. So hopefully the weekend goes well for the Blue Devils. Also, basketball is back this weekend. They've been off since before the break, and both teams are looking to get back into a little bit of a rhythm. The men's basketball team, you may remember, had that game against UB, the exhibition game back in November. That was a very close game. Fredonia had a big lead at one point. UB ended up coming back to win it. In their games that have counted towards regular season standings, they're 1-4. They beat Hartwick on November 20th, 89-82. That's their only win of the season. But some of the losses have been very close. I mean, their first regular season game was a 5-point loss to Hilbert. They lost to Grove City by 4. On November 22nd, they lost by 2 to Pitt Bradford, which is so far their only home game of the season. And then they had a tough one on November 25th at Elmira. That's the other thing. The basketball teams, is more so the men's team, they really haven't been home very much. I mean, they've only had one home game so far this season, and they're on the road again this weekend. They're at New Paltz at 7:30 on Friday night and then at Oneonta at 4 o'clock on Saturday. But after that, it is 7 straight home games for basketball. They kind of have a stretch where they're like, and I'm not used to seeing this, they have a stretch where they're on the road for like 6 straight games. Then they're home for 5 in a row. Then they're on the road for 4 in a row. Then they're home for 3 in a row. Usually, a lot of times you'll see like over a weekend, they'll be at Plattsburgh and at Potsdam because that's a far trip and those two are close together. Or, for example, they might be at Cortland and at Morrisville because those two are close together. But it's interesting that they have a lot of games there's these big chunks. It's not like interspersing home and away. It's like, okay, you're on the road forever, and then you're at home forever, and then you're on the road forever, then you're at home forever. That's kind of how their schedule is structured. So hopefully they can turn around a 1-4 start once they get to play some more home games. The women's basketball team got off to a really strong start, but they've struggled in their most recent games. They started 3-0 with a tournament in Wooster, Ohio that they won both games they played, and then they got a win at William Smith on November 15th. They've lost their 2 games since then. They lost a 4-point game to Alfred back on November 20th and then hosted John Carroll on November 23rd. That's a very tough opponent and hung tough but ultimately fell short. The women's basketball team, of course, the teams travel together, so they are also at New Paltz on Friday. That game tips off at 5:30. And then at Oneonta on Saturday, that game tips off at 2. And for the women's team, they also have a stretch. They've got 5 straight home games, but the women's team is not home at all for the rest of the fall semester. As a matter of fact, they only have 3 more games in this fall semester. They have the 2 this weekend, and then December 11th, they're at Houghton, which is noticeably, closer of a trip than New Paltz or Oneonta. But then they start January with 5 straight games at home, and they play a handful of games over break. A lot of teams do that. They sort of get their midweek SUNYAC games out of the way when students don't have to worry about going to classes and things like that. And then finally, the other sporting event going on, the Blue Devil invite for the men's and women's swim and dive teams. That was the weekend that we were getting ready to go on break. It was a 3-day, 6-team invite. The women's team finished in 5th place and the men in 6th, and there were some solid individual performances in that as well. The swim team, they have one more meet, and then they head for their winter training. Yeah, they've got one more meet. They are at Alfred State at 1 o'clock on Saturday. And then in January, and that's it for the fall semester. Then in January, they head down to Florida for some winter training. And they've got 4 meets in January. They got 1 at the end of January and then 3 in that first week in February. And then the SUNYAC Championships hosted at the Flickinger Center in Buffalo start on Wednesday, February 19th. Again, the winter sports season is not as heavy hitting as the fall and the spring. There's just not as many sports going on in the winter, but still definitely it is somewhat of a busy time. Of course, a lot of students definitely preparing for their final exams and things like that as we get very close to the end of the semester. There's only how many more days of classes? Yeah, after today, there's only 7 more days of classes. Of course, with this week being an abbreviated short week with the 2 days off has definitely, I think, thrown everybody for a little bit of a loop, myself included. Wednesday's my busiest day of the week, and starting the week on a Wednesday, I remarked to one of our other members of the station earlier that starting the week on my busiest day of the week has definitely thrown me for a little bit of a loop, but hopefully things will start to settle down as we wind down. I hope everybody had a terrific Thanksgiving break, and I hope everyone's enjoying the show so far this afternoon. So I'm going to take a short break, and when I come back, deep breath, I guess we have to talk about the Buffalo Sabres. So thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports Podcast this afternoon on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
Every smile, I'm going deeper. I know it's time. I'm gonna stop loving. I'm gonna stop thinking about what I might miss. Gonna stop to my childhood past. I'm gonna stop thinking about this.
We're radio guys. Of course we listen to WCVF 88.9.
I'm AJ.
And I'm Big Justin. And the voice gets a big boom. We bring the boom to WCVF. We bring the boom. We bring the boom to you. We bring the boom to WCVF. We bring the boom. We bring the boom to you.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast. That one always makes me laugh. That's hilarious. That's Justin Malinowski and AJ Giovanetio. A parody of the We Bring the Boom was an internet sensation, and it was AJ and Big Justice were the two people that did that. So Justin and AJ thought they'd make their own spin off that, and I happened to see it on our computer, and it makes me laugh, so I had to play it. Not to mention, moving forward with today's show, before I get in talking about the Sabres, I've got an event that you could definitely take the bait for if you so choose. SUNY Fredonia is now offering fly fishing and fly tying classes. Celebrate the 30th anniversary of this class by catching this event. Yeah, it's been going on for 30 years. These classes occur every Tuesday from 7 to 8:30 p.m. until December 24th. The club will meet at Rockefeller P84, which is the Costello Community Room. And that's when you walk in the main entrance of the Rockefeller Arts Center. That's right on your left. Again, this is every Tuesday night from 7 to 8:30 p.m. until December 24th. So for the rest of the semester, and then for an extra week after that. So the Sabres, because we have to talk about them. It's difficult to put into words the level of frustration that is being felt by Sabres fans across the board today. It is palpable with fans who dedicate so much time, so much effort, so much money. And I've said the same thing countless times on Big Blue. And to be quite frank, I'm so tired of it. I am so sick and tired of coming on this show every week and having to talk about how the Buffalo Sabres do not look like an NHL team. I am so tired of coming on here and questioning the mental toughness, questioning the effort, questioning the ability of this team. This is a team that holds the longest playoff drought in NHL history. There has never been a hockey team, ever, that has missed the playoffs even close to this many seasons in a row. I'll put it in perspective for you. The last time the Buffalo Sabres were a playoff team, I was in first grade. I am a junior in college. It is ridiculous. The ridiculous thing about it, though, they don't seem to care. They don't. Prove me wrong. This team does not care whether they make the playoffs or not. It seems to me that all many of them care about is cashing their check at the end of the day. Maybe scoring a few goals. Maybe you pick some wins up along the line. But do they really, really have what it takes to put everything they have on the line and go dedicate themselves to go try and make a good hockey team? My answer at this point in the game, no. They do not have what it takes. Simple as that. End of story. Close the book, hook, line, and sinker. This team does not have what it takes. And it's sad because you know that there is talent there. You know that they have proven that they can win games. They are close to a 500 hockey team right now. Their overall record is 11-12-2. It's an old adage in hockey that if you play well at home, in theory, you should play well in front of your fans instead of being scared of them like the Sabres apparently are. If you play well in front of your home, play well at home, and play decent on the road, you're going to be a good team. The Sabres don't play well on the road, and now they don't play well at home either. So where do you play well? You tried playing over in Europe. Guess what? You stink there too. Sorry, you do. It was true. Like, it's not wrong. Those two games in the Czech Republic, they were a mess. I know they had some players injured, but they were a complete mess. And guess what? They're still a mess. And how I am coming on the show today, this fired up and angry, after the Buffalo Sabres held a 4-0 lead less than 12 minutes into the game. Yes, I said that right, but let me repeat it. The Sabres, 12 minutes into the game, the Buffalo Sabres had a 4-0 lead. The Sabres had scored 4 goals. They had given up 0. The Sabres were dominating so much in the early going that Colorado pulled their starting goaltender halfway through the first period after giving up that 4th goal. They pulled Alexander Georgiev and put in Scott Wedgwood. And you would think, considering the fact that the Sabres didn't score at all for the rest of the game, you would think, oh, wow, Wedgwood must have had a really great game. Wedgwood didn't have to do anything. Wedgwood could have sat on top of the net and played Sudoku on his phone for the rest of the game, and the Avalanche still would have won. Because Buffalo did not put forth even close to the amount of effort that they should have. Usually, in sports, you try not to take your foot off the gas after you got a big lead. Not only did the Sabres take their foot off the gas, the Sabres got out of the car. The Sabres parked the car, forgot to put it in park, and then watched it crash into a snowbank. I mean, it's ridiculous. You surrender a 4-0 lead at home when you've chased your opponent's goaltender from the game. It's absolutely pathetic. And I'm not going to lie, that's what this team is. They're pathetic. There's no going around it. This team proved last night that they do not have the mental fortitude to battle adversity. How's that going to get you when you're trying to make the playoffs? Guess what? It's not. I'm sorry, I don't think this team's going to make the playoffs. And what a shame that is. In a year where a lot of other teams in their division have not played all that great. This season is an opportunity for the Sabres to maybe break through as a young up-and-coming team in the Atlantic Division. The rest of the Atlantic Division hasn't been very good. You watched the Boston Bruins fire their coach 2 weeks ago because they were underperforming. It just, I mean, the Sabres have tried everything. They changed the coach, didn't change. They changed all the players. They traded their star players and watched them all go win championships elsewhere. So then you have to take a look at the organization and realize what has been so clear all along is that this organization is an absolute pathetic mess from the top on down. And it starts with Terry Pegula. Terry Pegula, I have no question that Terry Pegula loves the team. He does. Terry Pegula is a lifelong Sabres fan. We've heard the stories. He told it in his introductory press conference when he first bought the team in 2011, how he used to park his car, on the side of the road and have his friend in Olean hold his phone up to the radio so Terry could listen to the Sabres game if he was on a business trip somewhere. Like, you would think that an owner that grew up a fan, an owner that when the team's best player of all time came out to meet him at his introductory press conference, he cried. You remember that? When Terry Pegula was introduced as the owner in 2011, when Gilbert Perreault came out to meet Terry, Terry was in tears. The team means something to him. That's not a question. I'm not saying that Terry Pegula is rooting for the Sabres to fail. No, that's ridiculous. There's no doubt everyone wants to win in the organization. Here's the thing, though. They don't know how. And Terry Pegula doesn't know how. And he's tried a whole lot, and none of it's worked. And you watch your star players go and win championships in other cities. Look at Florida last year. Sam Reinhart, Brandon Montour, Evan Rodriguez, all on that team, and I'm forgetting some too. Obviously we know about Eichel going to Vegas and all that business, but it is mind-boggling how the Buffalo Sabres continue to be the biggest joke in professional sports. And I wrote this in my notes. I said the Sabres are lucky the NHL isn't as big as the NFL, because if it was, there would not be a single team in sports that would get made fun of and be the punchline of every joke more than the Sabres. Like, if the NHL was of bigger popularity, they would get made fun of more than any other sports team on the face of the earth. And guess what? They probably deserve it, because their organization is a mess from top to bottom. It is a mess. They have not done anything right in the last decade and a half, and it is exhausting to the fans who dedicate their time, their energy, their money, their effort, their passion into rooting for this hockey team that doesn't seem to give any of that back. It is incredibly frustrating. And it's led to apathy among the fans. I mean, you look at even when the Sabres were successful the last few years, they can't sell out KeyBank Center anymore. I wonder why. I wonder why. Why would people want to continually go to games? Now, here's the thing. Maniacs like me will continue to go to Sabres games because I love going to Sabres games. And truth be told, even though they lost, I had so much fun last night. I always do. I love going to games. I have since I was a kid. But I don't blame, and it's the same, like, for me personally, I'm not going to completely give up on the Sabres and stop watching. I can't. The Sabres, honestly, the Sabres were my first favorite sports team. I understood hockey before I understood football. When I was a little kid, there's a lot of rules to football that are a little bit difficult to understand. And I didn't quite get all of those rules as a kid. I would watch the Bills games, but I was more invested in hockey, I would say, from an earlier age than I was in football, because hockey was very similar to soccer, and I played soccer as a kid. So the Sabres were kind of my first favorite team. I will never give up on them. I will never stop watching the games or stop rooting for them. I can't. However, I can't argue with anyone who would. I can't argue with anyone who would say, I'm done. I'm not watching anymore. I'm not going anymore. I can't blame you. Why would you? Why would you subject yourself to watching a team that so clearly does not have the mental fortitude to win in this league? It's so sad because the Sabres clearly, they have the talent to compete. That's not a question. They do. Because they've shown it. Like, for example, when they went out west and won every game on their West Coast road trip. When they had, they went to Madison Square Garden and dominated a very good Rangers team. How about the first 12 minutes of the game last night? When against the Colorado Avalanche, albeit Colorado's had their goaltending issues this year, overall, they're a good team. You're up 4-0 12 minutes into the game. The Sabres played great in the first period. And to be completely honest, I wasn't all that unhappy with the second period either. Yeah, they didn't play great. Yeah, they were caught in their own zone a lot, but they only gave up one goal in the second period. So they're going into the third up 4-1. Okay, you get out to a big lead. All right, you give up a couple of goals. It's whatever. I remember after Beck Malenstein scored to make it 4-0 Buffalo, I said out loud, do not blow this. They couldn't hear me from the 300 levels. They were too busy, celebrating, thought they had won the game already, didn't care to show up for the final 20 minutes. I don't know what it was. But the lack of effort that I saw in that third period should have had these guys skating until they drop in practice this morning. That is ridiculous and inexcusable. No. Let me rephrase that. It should be inexcusable, but it has been excused for years. Because the Sabres are, they don't want to do things that make them uncomfortable. They don't want to work any harder than they have to. And I talked about this before the season started on the show. I talked about how how hard this team works is going to determine their season, because you're going to have games where you don't necessarily have it. You don't have your best stuff. That happens. Everyone loses games. Even the Boston Bruins in 2022-23 set the record for the most wins in a season in NHL history. That team still lost 17 times throughout the year. So, like, everyone loses games, but it's a matter of, A, how do you respond to your losses? And B, in games where you might not have your best stuff, if you can really work hard and outwork your opponent, you might be able to push the game to overtime. You might be able to get a point or at least keep it close. The Sabres can't do that. Do you know why? They don't want to put in the work that it takes to do that. And I try to be careful about being critical of effort, because I used to, a lot of times, when my teams would lose, I always kind of assumed, oh, it's a poor effort. You get beat. It's a bad effort. Weren't working hard enough. You didn't want it enough. That's not always the case. Last night, it 100% was. When you've got players that cannot and simply will not hustle to back check, you turn the puck over, which, by the way, Sabres do that a lot, don't they? I remarked to my friend that I was at the game with, this has got to be one of the worst passing teams in the NHL, and they have been for years, and I don't know why nothing ever seems to get done about it. I get it, no team's ever going to be a perfect passing team, but my gosh, this team is truly awful at passing the puck. I mean, literally, it seems like when they pass the puck, they're not actually passing it to anyone. They're just throwing it to open space and hoping that it lands on the stick of one of their teammates. They don't, oh my gosh, I mean, you get passes in guys' skates, you get passes that are behind guys, and they're slow and lumbering, and they never win a race to the puck on the boards or anything like that. That's effort. That is a direct result of how much effort or a lack thereof. That is a direct result of this team simply not working hard enough. And here's the question. What do you do about that? You brought in Lindy Ruff, who is notorious for not tolerating a poor effort, and it's still happening. So what do you do? What are you going to trade someone? Fire someone? Who are you going to fire? You're not going to fire your general manager in the middle of the season. I know there's frustration with Kevin Adams, but they're not going to fire Kevin Adams. They're not firing anyone, truth be told. I don't know that this team gets any better as long as Terry Pegula is the owner, and he's not selling the team. So settle in. We might be in this drought for a really, really long time. And it's so sad because you look at the Bills, and we'll talk about the Bills after the break coming up. But you look at the Bills and what the Pegulas have done with the Bills. They bought a struggling football team that was kind of a punchline. They've turned them into one of the most dominant teams in the NFL, a team that just won their 5th straight division title, a team that might have the league MVP at quarterback. The Sabres, they bought a team that was on the fritz a little bit, but still a fringe playoff team, and they've turned them into the biggest joke in all of professional sports. And there's no getting around that. They are. I know a lot of joke is made about, all the New York Jets this and the Cleveland Browns that and all these other sports teams that struggle. The Sabres are worse than all of them. Truth be told, they are. I mean, they haven't even been close aside from 1 year. 22-23, they missed the playoffs by a point. That's by far the closest they've been in this entire time since 2011. This organization is the most poorly run organization in all of professional sports, and it trickles down to the players on the ice, and boy, was that evident last night. And it's evident when you walk around the arena, too. I mean, the fact that the Sabres switched from navy blue to royal blue 4.5 years ago. It was the summer of 2020 when they changed to that. And the signage in the arena is still navy blue. The mural in Alumni Plaza was just changed before this season started. The mural looked great, by the way, but it was just changed before the season started. It hadn't been updated since like 2010. Tyler Myers was the most recent Sabre on that mural until like August. As a matter of fact, Tyler Myers was the only guy on that mural who was even still playing in the NHL. And he hasn't played for the Sabres in what, 9 years? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's a reason they call the Sabres Arena KeyBank Library. Because why would fans show up? The team sure doesn't. They don't know how to. They don't know how to win. Because they don't want to put forth the effort that is required to go and win. It's too hard. And it is so sad. Because Buffalo is such a passionate hockey city. I mean, I've seen it. When the vague memories that I have of the Sabres being any good, Buffalo went crazy for the Sabres. I mean, you look back to the videos when the Sabres went to the Stanley Cup Final in 1999 or in 2006 when they were so close and they had some bad luck with injuries. 2007 when they were the best team in the league in the regular season. That arena was sold out for every single game. Fans went nuts. They used to call Buffalo hockey heaven. It's such a shame where this organization has fallen. And we've said the same thing year after year after year. I remember the Dwayne rant, the famous Dwayne rant, when a fellow by the name of Dwayne Steinell, who now has a podcast, he called into WGR after a particular Sabres loss and went on like a 5-minute rant about ownership and how they've fallen apart. And fans really identified with that. That's 5 seasons ago. And what has changed since then? Oh, you have different color uniforms now. Cool. No one cares. You have a different coach, different general manager. Cool. Nothing's changed. No one cares. Because you're about to miss the playoffs for the 15th straight year, which is so inexcusable in hockey. In a league where half of the teams make the playoffs. You just have to be in the top 50% of the league, and the Sabres can't even come close to doing that. And before that, it was even worse because there used to be 30 teams instead of 32. There were more teams until 2021. So for the first, 10, 11 seasons of this drought, more teams made the playoffs than missed it. And the Sabres found a way to be in the losers club every single year. And boy, is that a perfect embodiment for their organization. It is mind-bogglingly sad. It is frustrating. And I don't know where they go from here. I don't know what you do. I mean, you're paying guys millions of dollars to essentially skate with bricks on their feet and stick a microphone in their face after the game just so that they can say, oh, yeah, our effort just wasn't good enough. We got to do a better job getting pucks to the net, Enough of that. Enough of it. Because you said the same thing over and over for years. Enough. Fans are frustrated. Like, we're tired of the excuses because that's all it is. It's just excuses. Nothing changes. You know why? Because change requires work. And I'm not so sure that this team is committed to doing that. Prove me wrong. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sabres. Tomorrow night, play the Winnipeg Jets at home. Wearing the black and red jerseys. Go ahead. The Jets are a great team. Go ahead. Pour 8 goals on them. Get up to a 4-0 lead and then hang on to it. Prove me wrong. But until you do, I'm still going to believe that you guys are no different than the last 14 Sabres teams, which is not good enough. Not even not good enough. Not even close to good enough. Given the talent that is on this team, this should be unacceptable. But here we are again, folks. Here we are again. And settle in, because I don't know that it's getting better for a really long time. I don't know how you fix it. And clearly, neither do they. That's enough for the Sabres. I'm going to take a short break. So that was kind of long. I had a lot of thoughts on my mind, after the game. It's just it's incredibly frustrating. You know, you care about a team that doesn't seem to care about you back, and it's not necessarily the best feeling. But I'm going to take a short break and then wrap up the show with something a lot happier, which is talking about the Bills, who are going to be hosting at least one home playoff game for the 5th straight year. Thank you for tuning in to Big Blue Sports Podcast this afternoon on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
Tune in to News at Noon on Mondays and Wednesdays at noon with an additional news segment on High Noon Friday, every Friday at noon. News at Noon gives you your local, campus, and international updates, as well as sports and weather. Be sure to tune in.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast. I promise we're done talking about the Sabres and about losing because it's time to talk about the Bills, which is noticeably a lot more fun than talking about the Sabres, especially when you're talking about a team that is riding a 7-game win streak and is currently sitting at 10-2 and has clinched the AFC East division title for the 5th consecutive year. I think back to all those years where the Bills were kind of in a similar spot to where the Sabres are now, right? Where the Bills were the ones that were a complete pathetic joke and a slap in the face to the good people of Buffalo, where you would look on the playoff picture graphic, you know, that they always pop up before the games, and you would see the division leaders and then the teams in the wild card spots and in the hunt. That was the three most common words in a Western New Yorker's vocabulary in November and December were always in the hunt, because it would always, you would look at the graphic and the Bills would be sitting at like the Bills would be like 5-7 or something like that. And you'd be like, well, let's see. If we win each of our remaining games, and if this team loses all theirs, and if this team loses all theirs, this team ties like 3 of them, then we might have a chance. Like, it always seemed like it was that. And for now, going into Sunday night, looking at the schedule, being like, we win this game, we win the division, and we still got 5 games left. That's the thing. The Bills are they clinched their division. It's the team that clinched their division the earliest since I'm trying to remember the last team that clinched their division this early. I know the Colts in 2009. That was the team that they went 14-0 through their first 14 and then lost their last 2. The fans were really mad. They ended up losing in the Super Bowl. I think that was the last team that clinched their division this early. I mean, like the Bills have 5 games remaining, and they already know that they are going to be hosting at least one playoff game in January. And they're going to have an old friend that's back to do it. As the Bills announced today that safety Micah Hyde has signed with the Bills practice squad. He's not on the active roster. He has signed onto the practice squad. Of course, Micah Hyde was the starting free safety for the Bills from 2017 through last year. He retired at the end of last year. He had some injury concerns. And it kind of been like all summer and throughout the season, it had kind of been floated that, hey, maybe Micah Hyde could come back at some point. The offer's open. You know, it's potentially there. And then to see Micah Hyde re-sign with the Bills practice squad today, I don't know what it means as far as how much he's going to play. To be honest, you're not signing him to start. To be honest, it's probably injury insurance. I think a similar scenario to when the Bills brought A.J. Klein back last year, although that was a different circumstance. That was because the Bills were down to like their 7th string linebacker for their divisional round playoff game against the Chiefs. A.J. Klein was literally taking his family on vacation, like had the car packed, and the Bills called him and were like, hey, AJ, can you play on Sunday by any chance? And then he led the Bills in tackles, even though they lost. I think the way the Bills safeties have played, to me, going into the season, the safety spot was the weakest on the team to me. I did not feel super confident in the starting tandem of Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp. They have been very solid. Damar Hamlin has 3 interceptions this year. He had one again on Sunday night. He did, right? Am I mixing up my games? I might be. I don't know. But Damar Hamlin has played really well, and I got to give a shout out to Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp has been awesome. He was someone who was signed as a depth safety last year, and while he had the game-sealing interception against the Dolphins in Miami in the last game of the season last year that clinched the division title. Other than that, Taylor Rapp had kind of been up in the air, not great for a lot of the season. He's been very good for the Bills this year. So the Bills game on Sunday night against the 49ers, a snowy paradise in Orchard Park. The 49ers got on the board first with a 33-yard field goal from Jake Moody. The Bills then scored on one of the last plays of the first quarter, the last offensive play. Ray Davis runs it in from 5 yards out, 7-3 Buffalo at the end of the first quarter. Christian McCaffrey did get hurt in this game. He is out for the remainder of the season more than likely, which is just another tough blow to a 49ers team that's been destroyed by injuries this year. In the second quarter, the Bills with the ball, and on the first play of their next drive, James Cook takes off down the far sideline, 65 yards to the house. Bills lead it 14-3. Now, during this game, I have to say, so I was, of course, at home. I would have been here on campus for the game, but because it was canceled, because classes were canceled Monday, Tuesday, I was able to stay home and watch the game with my family. And my dog, I have a golden retriever named Cooper. He is 6 months old, just a little more than 6 months old. He's almost 7 months old. And I don't sit during Bills games. I am up moving around. I'm jumping around, yelling, screaming, the whole works. And Cooper thinks that is me saying, you should totally come jump on me and use my arm as a chew toy and all that sort of stuff. And so when James Cook took off for that touchdown, my dad and I are both jumping up and screaming, and the dog just started going absolutely nuts. So to prevent this, apparently one way to get my dog to not jump is to stand on the stairs. My sister says it asserts dominance. I don't know. But I stood on the stairs, and I kid you not, I watched the entire rest of the game on my staircase, looking from behind my Christmas tree pretty much. And when the Bills would score, I would run upstairs to my bedroom to go do my celebration. I Bills Mafia table jumped onto my bed a few times every time the Bills scored a touchdown. So Buffalo then has a 97-yard drive at the end of the half. Josh Allen finds Matt Collins for a 7-yard touchdown, 21-3 Buffalo at the half. In the third quarter, you had that insane touchdown, Josh throwing to Amari Cooper and him lateraling back to Allen and diving for the pylon. Bills win 35-10. They are 10-2, 6-0 at home. The Bills have 5 games left. They have 2 road games. They're at the Rams on Sunday, then at Detroit, home against New England, home against the Jets, and then at New England to finish out the year. I will say they have an easier schedule for the most part than Kansas City does. So could the Bills get the number 1 seed? I would say it's definitely in play. And of course, the Bills have the head-to-head tiebreaker from beating them a couple of weeks ago. Well, that will do it for this afternoon's episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. Next week will be the last episode of the semester. I'll preview the rest of the Bills season and their chances to get the number 1 seed. And hopefully we'll come back in January talking about the Bills in the playoffs. So thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. We will catch you all next week. All Things Considered, presented by National Public Radio, is coming up next. You're listening to WCVF. We'll catch you next week.